Today I'm joined by one very fine guest, Michael Friedman, the COO of One Fine Stay. Michael, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Flo. It's great to be here.
Let's jump right in. Michael, where did you grow up?
Sure. So I grew up in what's called a suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a little town called Whitefish Bay, right on Lake Michigan, and it was great. It was a great place to grow up, and I loved living there, and it kind of part of my life, as we talk more, brought me back to Wisconsin. So there was an element that was really intriguing to come back to this area. So yeah, it was great. It was a great upbringing, and then I ended up going to school at the University of Wisconsin here in Madison, where I reside now.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great place. It was really a fun place to grow up, and I enjoyed it.
What did you study in uni?
So I actually was a history and political science major, which was a double major, which interestingly enough, at the time, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I grew up in a family that was very involved in the real estate industry in Milwaukee and the commercial and residential development side of things. And really honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I'll go to law school. At one point, I was recruited by the State Department here in the U.S. And so, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And obviously, here we are today. It's a much different journey than I thought I would have taken. But it was a great school, by the way. Anyone looking to send their children to a wonderful university, the University of Wisconsin is just top notch.
History and political sciences, you said. So I'm surprised you're not unemployed today. No, I'm sorry. That's a really bad joke. But it just shows, again, like one of the themes I think I want to get out, if any young people are listening to this, is the illusion of the linear career path and all that, and doing something and then figuring out like, hey, that's actually not my thing. So when you finished uni, was there anything where you said, well, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, at the time, I thought, I really honestly didn't know what I wanted to do with my life and career. And there are still days when I still question that, being in the industry we're in. I wonder, is this the right place? But I think it is, obviously. And you know that about me. I love this and I have a passion for vacation rentals. But at the time, I really didn't know. I was like, okay, I'll have this degree. Maybe I'll go to law school, like I was saying. Maybe I'll work for the government. But ultimately, what ended up kind of pulling me and drawing me back was, real estate and the real estate world. I had grown up in it, and my father was very heavily involved in it, and it just kind of drew me back. And so, right out of school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do at all. And I went to work for Macy's department stores in New York City for a very short period of time, like 4 or 5 months, and I just absolutely hated it. And retail was just not my gig, and came back and I really just soul searching. What do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? And ultimately, at the end of the day, real estate kind of drew me in, and it's kept me involved in real estate, whether it be on the residential selling side of things, to obviously now being in the vacation rental vertical and travel and hospitality. I have to say though. I always get this question, and people are like, well, what if you went back and what could you do? Again, I love and have this enormous passion for food and cooking. I don't know that I'd want to be a personal chef or a chef in a restaurant, but I love food and something in the food world. I always joke, I'd love to be the next Anthony Bourdain, but, ultimately, I think, all of us would have loved that type of life, traveling the world and eating food and meeting different people.
I'd use cooking to disconnect, especially now working from home, because you just walk out of your home office and there's family right in your face. So I disappear into the kitchen, I cook. It's my way to disconnect. And I like cooking a lot, and apparently I'm fairly decent. And there's so often when people say, oh, Flo, you should open a restaurant, or you're just like, no, you mad? That's a crazy difficult job. It's a really hell of a job. But taking a step even further back, because I forgot to ask you, what's kind of your earliest childhood memory of a career child version of what I want to do with my life? Is there an early memory somewhere?
Not really, no. I really honestly, I love, like I said, I've always loved food. And then, I went to the university and really had no clue. I mean, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it was 5 years of having a lot of fun at the University of Wisconsin. And, making sure that I graduated and got out. But from that, I never really had oh my gosh, I want to be a doctor or an astronaut or a lawyer or whatever the case would be. I never really had that path. And I think that's, you mentioned this earlier. I think it's important for people to know that not having that direction or vision is okay. I think, really trying to find what you're passionate about and pursuing it. And so for some people, going to a university is not their path. For some people, being an entrepreneur their whole lives is. So it really, whatever your passion is, I say follow it. For me, I really didn't have. I had some of that support, and I'm not being critical of the way I was raised, but I was kind of in this linear path of okay, you graduate high school, you go to the university, you get a job, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And for me, I think I would have taken a different path if I had to turn back the clock now, and I'd probably go down a different road.
Which is also, I think, with how companies are hiring now, where they all say, I'm not entirely sure they all do it, but they all say character comes before education because you can learn anything. But yeah, I very much agree. I had a similar path where, it's just like you think this is what you do. You finish school, you study something. That's just how it's done. And if you don't, you're not kind of a serious person. Which
I agree.
Yeah.
I think you said something just a minute ago that I think is really important for people to go back and listen to, which is, character comes before education. Obviously, you want experience, but in today's world, I know a lot of really highly educated people. They're good people, but yet, are their is their character questionable? Not to say it's questionable. I just think that understanding the world from a social perspective, and obviously, having social skills and understanding your industry is equally important, because education is one thing, but obviously operating and doing and performing is another. And I think that's just a really important part to it. And character plays such a big role in that, especially in the vertical and hospitality vertical we're in today. Obviously, it plays a very, very big role.
Did your family pull you in once they realized that you're bumbling around a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. But really, I found myself. I found that over time, real estate just kind of drew me back into the fold, where I got involved in residential real estate and selling, and was very successful at it. I realized that I have a tremendous amount of charisma. And again, I'm not trying to boast ego here. I'm just saying that I have a tremendous amount of charisma, and I'm very well liked by people. One of the things that people ask me is, what's one of your greatest gifts? And I think it's building genuine rapport quickly. And I think that's a really important trait. And for me, it comes super easy. And I think what I realized is that I need to be in an industry that I work with people. I love selling. I love building things. And that's kind of what propelled me into getting more involved in real estate. And then I've obviously eventually, over the last 15, 16 years, being more involved in the short-term or vacation rental industry.
I think being a person that's easy to talk to and likable for real estate, that's a very good trait. I'm too dumb to be kind of a surgeon or a doctor or stuff, but yeah, I think when you're a little bit of a character, or you have a little bit of charisma, it's just a good industry to work in. So after Macy's, what was your next paying job back then?
Then I worked for, what did I do right after Macy's? I came back, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I worked part-time. This is embarrassing, but I worked part-time at Blockbuster Video, which was still, in existence during the day. And I worked for Blockbuster Video and really just did a lot of soul searching. I then did work for and helped my father's company as well. And I think that was the part, that was the precipice to make me realize that real estate is a path that I want to go down. You know, when I was a kid growing up, and I remember this, and this is really interesting, I remember, you know, what does your dad do, or what does your family do? And, you know, it was real estate. I was like, oh God, how boring is real estate? You know, owning investment properties and, you know, apartment buildings. I mean, how exciting can that be? And then one day I had this epiphany as I sat down with my father, and he said, well, this is how this works. You buy it for this, you let it appreciate, and you sell it for this, and this is the profit you make. And when I saw those numbers, I was like, holy crap. You know, that's just on one property, and then there was 15 or 20 or 30 of those. And so that was kind of the light bulb moment, if you would, when I was like, okay, I've got to figure this out. How do I get involved in it? What do I do? And, you know, and obviously residential real estate for me became easy because my dad was involved in it, you know, on the residential and commercial and development side. But it just allowed me to kind of take that career path that I wanted to be in.
What you just said about the value that you buy it for and the value you sell it for makes me think of a very, very old and lame joke where a teacher is walking down the street and then he sees a sports car park and a young guy gets out and he's like, well, hold on, you're Peter. You used to be in my class. I'm your math teacher. It's like, oh, yeah, Mr. Miller, nice to see you. It's like, oh, you've got a tremendous clothes. You drive a tremendous car. It's like, I'm a little bit surprised, I have to say. Like, you were never the best student, and in math, you were, like, really one of the worst, to be honest. And the guy goes, yeah, you know, what I do now is I just buy stuff for $100, and then I sell it for $200, and I live off this 2% profit that I make.
Exactly.
It's easy as that. Or from real estate, you've been obviously a good while in real estate.
I have, you know, and that's like I said, it's been a good career path. I think what I realized in part of real estate, which kind of, and this is a good, you know, from a transition perspective, how I got into vacation rentals. What happened for me was while I was selling real estate, I always believed, and still do to this day, in the power of coaching, mentoring, those types of things. And I had multiple real estate coaches that helped me grow and build my business. And while I was involved in it, I also found that I had a really, you know, I guess passion for that too, which was helping people, learning from my experiences, my mistakes, and how can I help others transform their lives and businesses to be better. So one of the things I did was, while I was selling, I also got involved in becoming a real estate coach and trainer and helping other realtors get involved in, you know, growing their businesses. And part of that was I also was working with a company that allowed us to do some outside consulting. Okay. And that's really what brought me into vacation rentals, where a company here in the U.S. called iTrip, which is well known, it's one of the largest franchises and very, very well respected in the industry, was looking for someone to help build out their training program, their iTrip University, and work with all their new franchisees in how to scale and grow their business. And so I started that really as a consultant, and then that slowly merged into a full-time role with them, spending almost 6 years with iTrip. And then from there, you know, here we are today. You know, obviously done different things, and we can talk more about that. But yeah, that's kind of what brought me into the fold of vacation rentals, in the world of vacation rentals.
I mentioned this before we started the recording. You've seen a lot of this vacation rental industry, and it's a very dynamic industry. I've worked for several companies, and sometimes it's a good match and sometimes it isn't. What's kind of important when you look at a company and at a position to say, I think this is where I want to work, this is where I want to spend my time?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I have, you know, obviously, for people who know me and have known me in this industry, I have, you know, had several positions. You know, from iTrip, I moved on to do some consulting work. Then I worked for another large franchise here in the U.S. and I worked for a software company and helped develop that, and launched and founded Vacation Rental University 5 years ago, which is still in existence today as a platform to really help vacation rental managers grow and build their business. I think for me, it's I guess the best way to describe it is I love building things. I love working with companies that have and give me the opportunity to, number one, leverage the relationships I have in the industry, the reputation I have in the industry, but to build things, to see things go from its infancy to growth. I have to say, and I'm going to admit this publicly, and that's fine, is that I get bored easily, and that's just part of my DNA and how I'm made up. But I have to continually be challenged. And so I think with companies today, if there's a great challenge and an opportunity to grow, I look at that as a value add. But I think it really first and foremost starts with two things. Number one, it starts with the leadership and who are those individuals, and what type of morals and ethics and integrity do they have. Secondly, what is the product or service? It's got to be something that I'm incredibly passionate about, because if it's not, then it's just another mundane job, and I don't want that. I want something that I could work on and build. And I think what I've found is over the years I've progressed into different roles, working for small startups and entrepreneurial type companies, to now being with one of the largest hospitality brands in the world, which we're owned by Accor. But being the chief operating officer for One Fine Stay, it's a little bit of a different environment for me, but it allows me to thrive and grow, and that's really important.
I have to say, I do admire people who figure out, or who figured out very early in their life what they want, what they're good at, and just went for it and just went this more linear path. And the other part of the world that I envy a little bit is people who work for a company for 10 years, either in the same role or then just kind of bump from one position a little bit up. I very much relate to what you said. I have that as well, that I need new stuff, and I don't see it as a skill. I see it as a burden. But I can see what you mean, definitely. There's another thing that you mentioned I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in. You mentioned the ethics and the belief system of the leadership. Something that it takes a little bit to find that really out. Like, you need to work with people for a while to understand where you ended up. How do you figure this out earlier in the process?
That's a great question, and I don't know if there's one set answer, Flo. I think our industry. Let me step back, and I'll get to my answer here in a moment. But I want to make this point because I think it's really important. One of the things that recently came out at a conference I was at is that our industry is very fragmented, and there's I think what we have to do as an industry, whether it be property managers, OTAs, PMSs, EMCs, whatever the case is we have to work together. And I think what we're seeing in our industry is there's this fragmentation of I'm a competitor, but I'm not going to share my knowledge and information. And I think Europe does it better than the Americans. I'll be completely candid with you. I think European companies are more cohesive. They're more collaborative. They work together. In the Americas, it's tough. I think it's just got this competitive environment, and unfortunately, that sometimes can lead to people now not doing the right thing, or saying the wrong thing, or and I agree, everyone should have a voice. I think it's important, but as an industry, this is really important. We have to be looked at as professionals. Not that we're continuing to strive to be professionals, but we are professionals. And that if we work together and come together as an industry, we're going to be better off long term. And I think that starts with the leadership of these companies. It starts with the people who are leading the charge, whether it be an OTA, a PMS, any of these travel or hospitality companies, hotel brands, all of the above. And how do you know if they're the right person? You don't. You sometimes have to have a conversation with those individuals and really make sure and see if they're aligned with your values. And if they are, then you hope that it's a good fit. I can tell you so many people who have said, "Oh my gosh, I thought this was a great fit," and then 3 months later, they're looking for a new role or something else. I've been in that position, and this is no harm, no foul to those companies. It just might be that they take a different turn, they go a different direction, they pivot, and it may not align with what you're looking for. But I think really understanding who that leadership is, having really in-depth dialogue and conversations with them, because I think a lot of times, I don't want to say the warts or the bad stuff comes out from those conversations, but I think also it's a gut check. It's a gut check to say, this feels really good in my heart.
Yeah.
It feels really good right here. And then you take the leap. And that's the leap that a lot of people won't do, is that maybe keeps them in a role, for a long period of time, but yet they're miserable. They're challenged. They're not using their skills to their best use. So I think taking that leap too is really important. And for some people, it's more difficult than others. For me, it's not. I like the fact that sometimes there are opportunities, and I look at them, and it's like, okay, what's next? But those are the things that work for me, not everyone.
Yeah, I sometimes think how companies hire employees and how employees kind of apply. It's a weird process. I spent more time with my colleagues when I was back in the office than with my wife. Yet with my wife, I had a long process of getting to know each other until we decided this could be permanent. Whereas with a company, it's kind of like 2-3 conversations, and everyone's faking, everyone's BSing how great everything is, and then you work together, and it's like, well, he's kind of crap, this company's kind of crap. I'm fascinated by this. Not that I have a good solution for it, but I just think it's weird.
I don't think I do either. I think for me though, and again, this might resonate with different people who are listening to this, I think it's the leadership. You have to kind of tick that box.
Yeah.
But then the person themselves has to be passionate about that product or service they're going to be working with. Because I think that, to me, at least personally, is really, really important. And this isn't a slam on any type of vertical within the industry or service. If I'm not passionate about it, if it doesn't get me up and it causes me to be excited,
yeah,
then I'm not going to put 100% in. And that's where I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, this is a great idea, it looks really cool, and then they get into it, and it's like, oh god, this is really boring, this isn't something I want to do. And so I think you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Money isn't everything. Trust me. I mean, there's some big numbers that get floated by people, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm making X, and now I can double my income. But yet, if you're working with some people in a product and service that just has no value, or more importantly, you're not excited, you're going to burn out quickly.
Yeah. How did you end up with One Fine Stay?
Yeah, so I had been working with a startup for about a year, and unfortunately, it just didn't really pan out the way I thought it would. And One Fine Stay was looking for a chief operating officer here in the Americas, and through a company that does a lot of search here in the U.S. They were able to help me find the role and navigate that piece, and that's how I was connected to One Fine Stay, as they were looking to grow and build out the Americas for their business models for both the property management side, which we manage in 4 locations globally, where we're an actual PMC, London, Paris, New York, and Los Angeles, and then our OTA business, where we work with luxury property management providers to distribute their inventory globally.
I know you can't answer this question, but I have to ask, how long until you get bored with One Fine Stay?
I love what I'm doing. I really do. I'm going to answer it because I'm passionate about what we're doing as a company. There's no perfect workflow. There's no perfect world. I think the one thing that I really enjoy about One Fine Stay is we've got a great brand, we've got a great company behind us, and a core. The role kind of takes care of itself. I've got a great team here in the Americas. Like I said, I don't think anything is perfect. If there was, everyone would be working for that company. The Apples of the world and the Googles of the world, and all these big companies that everyone says, oh, it's great to work there. They're not perfect. Yeah. So I think you have to find what's right for you. And for me, at the moment, it's One Fine Stay. I love what I'm doing here. I feel I'm making a difference. And I think those are kind of the boxes that get ticked and checked. So for the moment, I'm pretty happy where I'm at.
Politically a very correct answer. So let's go into the theoretical. You mentioned earlier you'd love to do something with food. If you could now choose to do something in that direction, what could that look like?
Well, I think I would try and tie it to my passion for travel. You know, like I joked earlier, like, yeah, I'd love to be the next Anthony Bourdain, but, you know, in all honesty, I would love something like that, you know, where I could travel, talk about different locations, and whether it be in the vacation rental vertical, hospitality vertical, I don't know, you know, but I love different cultures. I love people. I love meeting people. And, you know, there's that element of food that ties, I think, us as a people together, you know, sitting around the table like you and I did a few weeks ago in Barcelona, and having a meal with your friends and talking and getting to know one another, and just really doing those types of things would be a blast. Now, the key is getting paid for it, and I am not Anthony Bourdain, and I don't think CNN is ready to hire me yet, but you never know. Listen, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier. You have to follow your passion. You know, I was listening to another audiobook the other day called Atomic Habits, and it's a fascinating book. And you know, part of the book talks about, you know, following your passion and building great habits. And I was also listening to a guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, who maybe some of you listen to and like, and he talks about the same thing. Follow your passion, no matter how old you are. And figure it out, because there's ways to do things. You know, honestly, if I wanted to do that and pursue that, could I? Sure. Would it be successful? I don't know. But if I don't try, or even look at even trying to do something like that, then I'll never know. And those are those regrets that we carry with us, you know, till the end of our lives. And you know, I try not to have many of those. That's the key thing.
It wasn't exactly food in my example, but when I was about 8 years old, my parents traveled with me to England. I didn't have English in school just yet. And I remember we were at a pub, and my parents said, like, you go now to the bar and you say, I would like some tea, please. And that was the first phrase in English that I learned. And my parents basically just said, like, you take this, you go to that person, you say that, and you will get tea. And it was like magic for me. And earlier this year, I traveled with my family to Paris. My kids are 8 and 10. And I repeated that. I speak this much French, and I taught them how to order water and how to order the bill at the end of the meal. And I could just repeat this experience for my kids on how language and, like, in a restaurant, and the food, like how this can be a mind opener and connect people. And the apparently grumpy, famous French waiters, they were the most lovely people, because they realized these two little humans made an effort of speaking a little bit French, and it just created a super atmosphere. So yeah, I'm very, very much with you there. So if I ever come up with something, because I'd love to be a professional eater, very much so, let's brainstorm after the recording and figure this out.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it would be great. You know, obviously it's just, you know, is it realistic? I don't know. What's realistic? You know, it's like I said earlier, follow your passion, and doesn't matter if it's realistic to the rest of the world. It only matters to you.
So we talked about your past, we talked about your present, we talked about a little bit your future. Apart from finding something with food, what could be another, like in a more distant future, something, a project that you'd like to get your hands on?
Gosh, you know, that's a great question, and I obviously want to continue to build and grow my career within the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
I think there's so many different verticals that we have in the hospitality industry, from hotels to, like I said, short-term rentals. I love the space I'm in. I've been in it, you know, now quite some time. I've done very well in it, and I just want to continue to give back. And so I'm really honestly not sure what that looks like.
Yeah.
I think over time I'd like to continue to give back, and you know, whether it be, you know, Vacation Rental University has served a lot of people, and I think it's part of, you know, something we built in kind of it does still exist, and we still have subscribers to it.
Yeah.
But maybe some way of being able to consult and give back to the industry that's treated me so well.
Yeah.
Over the years, and I think just sharing that knowledge and expertise with the industry, whether it be different companies, different property management companies, vendors, whatever the case would be.
Yeah.
I believe in giving back. I think the more you give, the more you get, and it's just the way I've been raised. It's what I believe in. So maybe doing something in that line of work or field, or you could be just purely volunteer. That's fine too. I'm happy to do that, and I do a lot of that where I can.
Tell me, as we come to the end of the interview, tell me a little bit more about the Vacation Rental University. Who's it aimed at?
About 5 years ago, I got together with a couple different people who we saw this void and gap in really great education in the industry. There really wasn't a platform per se that was out there that a person could go to and be like, okay, I want to start a vacation rental management company, property management company. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? And so we decided, let's get together and provide a resource that can give those individuals those tools and knowledge, everything in all different modules. So it took us about 7 months to film over 400 different lessons and modules, everything literally flowed, the A to Z of property management. So if you're an experienced manager and you were building and scaling your team, there's modules on that. Hiring right, the marketing element of things, the digital side of things, operations, owner relations, onboarding, biz dev, I mean, you name it, it's there. And I think what we've created is a platform that, like I said, anyone can really plug and play into it. There's a free element to it where you can get the basic lessons, but if you want something more, you can subscribe to it. It's very affordable. But what it's done is it's given, I think, the industry some tools that people can use to help grow their business. And so a lot of the people who subscribe to it are smaller management companies, but yet we do have a few large companies that have used it as their LMS and their learning management system, and they're able to incorporate their own learning tools into it as well. So we've customized it really for just the industry itself, and I think it's great. And this isn't a criticism of the rest of the industry. It's just there are some learning platforms now that people can go to, whether it be through an association or other things, but it's just limited.
I was just thinking, with your passion for giving back and educating and sharing and helping people, maybe there's a Professor Friedman at the University of Wisconsin for vacation rentals on the horizon.
Maybe, you never know. You just never know. That could be a new class within the business school or real estate school here. So yeah, it might be kind of fun to do that.
All right. Michael, we've come to an end. Thanks so much for taking the time. Always like so much talking to you. And yes, I can confirm that you are very, very likable and very easy to talk to. And I'm looking forward to bumping into you again fairly soon.
This has been great. I appreciate your time as well.